Okay. Okay. Feminist Philosophy of Language. This was first published in 2004 on September 3rd on a Friday, and it was substantively revised in 2025 on July 4th. Hey, it was my birthday. On a Friday again, which is very interesting. Um, Feminist philosophy of language has come a long way in a very short time period. Based. Initially, most work in the area was critical, calling for changes either to language itself or to philosophy of language. Okay. More recently, however, the dynamic has changed with the advent of several major positive research programs within philosophy of language. In this entry, we first discuss the critiques that constitute the first phase of feminist work in this area before moving on to the positive research programs that have recently come to the fore. Our focus in this entry will generally be on the analytic tradition. For continental approaches, see the entries on feminist approaches to the intersection of analytic and continental philosophy, feminist approaches to the intersection of pragmatism and continental philosophy. Early language on language and philosophy of language. Section 1.1 False Gender Neutrality. One of the earliest issues the feminist writing about language discussed was the supposedly gender neutral use of terms like he and man. It is commonly said that these terms have both gendered specific meanings, as in sentences 1 and 2, and general neutral ones, as in sentences 3 and 4. He drank the wine. A man went into a bar. When a student comes into the room, he should pick up a handout. Man is a primate. Feminists, however, have pointed out that even the supposed gender neutral meanings of these terms are not really gender neutral. Janice Bolton, 1981, and Del Mercier, 1995, provide examples in which there is no doubt that a gender neutral meaning is intended, but this meaning seems unavailable. As a result, the sentences seem ill informed. 5. Man has two sexes. Some men are female. 6. Man best breastfeeds his young. We are then making a classificatory error if we claim that man and he are gender neutral terms. In order to avoid such a classificatory error, we need to do more careful work on what the meanings of these terms actually are. Perhaps the meaning of he that had been called gender neutral is not really gender neutral, but something much more complex. Mercier suggests, for example, that we should understand the gender-neutral use of man as referring to either a person or persons of unknown sex, or b, males or a combination of males and females. This explains why men in 5 and man in 6 are anomalous. These terms are being used to refer exclusively to persons known to be female. The supposed gender neutral meaning of these terms, then, is not truly gender neutral. But on its own, this does not show that there is a problem with those uses that have traditionally been classified as gender neutral, as in sentences 3 and 4. Discovering that we have misclassified an adjective as an adverb would not show anything wrong with actual uses of the term in question. Further reasons are needed in order to object to the use that is made of these terms. 1.2 Invisibility of woman. Feminist concerns, however, go beyond mere classificatory ones. Feminists have also argued that terms like he and man contribute to making women invisible, that is, to obscuring women's importance and distracting attention from their existence. Fighting the invisibility of woman is an important feminist project in many areas, and language that makes one less likely to think of women clearly contributes to this invisibility. Feminist perspectives on the self, feminist ethics, and feminist history of philosophy. There is a good psycholinguistic there's good psycholinguistic evidence that those who encounter sentences like 3 and 4 using the terms he and man think more readily of males than of females. There have been some criticisms of this research, but see also the response to these criticisms in Gastill 1990. If this is right, then the use of these words can be seen as contributing to the invisibility of woman. This gives feminists a good reason to object to the gender-neutral use of these terms. Maleness as norm. If one's only worry concerned the obscuring of women's presence, however, it would be difficult to object to certain other terms to which feminists do commonly object. Gender-specific occupational terms like manageress, used until recently decades, or lady doctor, sometimes called feminatives. In comparative linguistics, when the occupational term in question is designated female, as with the previous examples, these terms certainly do not contribute to the invisibility of women. Instead, they call attention to the presence of women. Moreover, they call attention to the woman's presence in positions of authority, doctor and manager. Nonetheless, most feminists who think about language find these terms objectionable. For an argument that femininims like manageress are both useful when it comes to the semantic exclusion of women and harmful insofar as they pragmatically reinforce presuppositions about gender. The clearest reason for objecting to manageress and lady doctor is that the use of these terms seems premised on the idea that maleness is the norm and that women filling these jobs are somehow deviant versions of doctors and managers. This is also a key objection to the use of he and man, Moulton. Moulton understands that these terms on the model of brand names like Kleenex, Velcro, Hoover, or Scotch tape that become generic terms for a product type. The message of such terms, he suggests, is that the brand in question is the best, or at least the norm. According to Moulton, terms like he and man work in the same manner. They are gender-specific terms for men whose use has been extended to cover both men and women. This, Moulton argues, carries the message that maleness is the norm. As a result, the use of these terms as if they were gender neutral constitutes a sort of symbolic insult to women. Lawrence Horn and Stephen R. Clendelier have disputed the details of this, noting that man did not begin its life as gender specific and then get extended to cover both women and men. Rather, man actually began its life as man, a gender-neutral term which only later acquired a gender-specific meaning. The temporal sequence, then, cannot support the claim that a gender-specific term has been extended to cover both genders. Nonetheless, Horn and Clendelier agree that the use of terms like he and man as if they were gender-neutral perpetuates the objectionable idea that men are the norm for humanity. The maleness of language. 1.4 Sex marking. English, like most, but not all languages, requires a great deal of what Marilyn Frye calls sex marking. For example, one cannot use pronouns to refer to a particular individual without knowing their sex. Frye, common with most feminists in the early 1980s, does not consider trans issues. Just the possibility that pronouns like he and she might be a matter of gender, not sex. Fry notes the absurdity of this. If I'm writing a book review, the use of personal pronouns to refer to the author creates the need to know whether the person's reproductive cells are the sort which productive ova or sort which produce sperm. Singular personal pronoun usage, Fry argues, is impossible without knowing the sex of the person one is discussing, and in many cases, sex would otherwise be utterly irrelevant. Fry takes this to be an instance of a general tendency to make sex relevant where it need not be, which she takes to be a key feature of sexism. In addition, she suggests the constant need to know and indicate sex helps to perpetuate the conviction that sex is a tremendously important matter in all areas. For Fry, this is a key factor in perpetuating male dominance. Male dominance requires the belief that men and women are importantly different from each other, so anything that contributes to the impression that sex differences are important is therefore a contributor to male dominance. In more recent literature, the concerns stemming from this earlier work are taken up by the literature on gender marking, discussed in 2.1. Yeah, I think I did enough reading. I love you, and I hope you're doing great out there. Let's continue on our journey of information.